There's a moment when your best business idea leaves your mouth in a meeting and everyone goes silent. You feel those skeptical stares piercing you, the air thick with unexpressed doubts, that eternal instant where your heart beats faster, and the urge to explain yourself more, to convince, to justify every detail of your vision consumes you from within. Most people immediately give in to that impulse. They start talking faster, add details no one asked for, show references, quote experts, try to sell harder when they sense resistance. On the surface, it looks like enthusiasm, but what they're really conveying is insecurity and desperation for approval. And it's precisely in that instant that they lose all possibility of true wealth, because he who explains too much devalues. The exact moment you feel the need to convince, you've already handed over the power of valuation to others. And that power, once given away, almost never returns to your hands. In the next few minutes, I'm going to show you why strategic silence is the most valuable asset in business and wealth creation. I'll reveal the invisible mistake that causes your best ideas to instantly devalue, even if they're brilliant. You'll learn the exact technique applied in 3 scenarios you'll face this week. You'll discover the complete system that transforms your presence into tangible value. Because here's the truth: the truly wealthy never share. He who talks too much sells cheap. He who stays silent commands a high price. If this has already made you rethink a recent interaction, like this now and join me. Think of silence as a bank vault. Most people believe a vault is only for safekeeping, for hiding, for passively accumulating. But the true function of a vault isn't just to protect what it contains, but to increase its value precisely because not everyone can access it. And that's exactly what we'll build today, your personal vault of invaluable worth. Let me explain exactly where the problem lies that prevents you from monetizing your true potential. Most people have a completely wrong relationship with their ideas, their knowledge, and their talent. They believe value lies in sharing abundantly, in explaining extensively, in passionately convincing. This more is better mindset is precisely what keeps their bank accounts empty. Look around you. The average entrepreneur talks incessantly about their project. They share every detail on social media, explain their business model to anyone who asks, reveal their complete strategy seeking validation. The result? Their idea is perceived as common, accessible, low value. The strategic entrepreneur, however, shares selectively. They create intentional mystery. They reveal only results, never complete processes. The result? Their very same project generates intrigue, exclusivity, and consequently premium valuation. This pattern destroys value at every stage. In the short term, your ideas get diluted upon premature contact with external opinions. In the medium term, your negotiating position weakens because you've already revealed your cards. And in the long term, the market permanently classifies you as a commodity, not a scarce asset. I've seen identical startups valued with differences of millions simply by how they initially presented their vision. But the real problem goes much deeper than a simple lack of discretion. There's a psychological programming that constantly pushes us toward over-explaining. From childhood, we were taught that we must justify our ideas to be taken seriously. The educational system rewards verbosity over precision. The family environment celebrates the child who expresses themselves well over the one who observes strategically. This programming becomes an automatic reflex. You feel resistance, you explain more. You notice skepticism, you add details. You perceive doubt, you reveal your complete plan. It's like a musician who plays all the notes in their repertoire within the first 5 minutes. No matter how virtuosic they are, the audience is no longer willing to pay for what they've already heard for free. The pattern repeats with mathematical precision. The more one explains, the less one charges. The more one justifies, the less one influences. True wealth is born from the space you create between what you know and what you share. Perhaps you found yourself in an investor meeting where, at the first objection, you unrolled your entire 5-year expansion plan. Or maybe you remember when you shared your complete methodology in that interview to position yourself as an expert. Surely you've had that feeling after an extensive presentation where, despite having brilliantly explained every detail, the client responded with a, "We'll consider it." Or when you revealed your innovative strategy at that networking event and, months later, saw someone implementing it without you. Even today, checking your LinkedIn posts where you essentially give away years of knowledge hoping someone will Recognize your value. Silence in business works like scarcity in economics. Nothing valuable is omnipresent. Oxygen is essential for life but is free due to its abundance. Knowledge works the same way. What you share freely, the market values at zero. The difference between those who generate wealth and those who barely subsist isn't in how much they know, but in how much they strategically retain. It's no coincidence that the world's wealthiest families are also the most discreet about their methods. It's no accident that the most valuable companies jealously protect their algorithms and processes. The hidden cost is even deeper. Every time you over-explain, you internally reinforce an identity of need, of insufficient inherent value. You position yourself as the one who must convince, not the one who must be convinced. This internal erosion of your self-worth eventually reflects in every negotiation, every price you set, every term you accept. But identifying the problem is just the first step. Now I'm going to show you exactly what to do, step by step, in 3 situations you'll face this week, where strategic silence will position you to generate real wealth. The core technique is called calculated value void, and it works precisely because it goes against every natural communication instinct. In essence, it involves deliberately creating spaces of silence where others will naturally project superior value. First, identify the exact point where you feel the urge to explain more, to justify, to convince. This moment is your indicator. You literally feel pressure in your chest, a subtle acceleration. Instead of giving in, breathe consciously and maintain steady eye contact. This creates an immediate dissonance in the expected dynamic. You'll notice a micro-gesture of surprise in your interlocutor. Then, instead of adding information, ask a concise question that redirects the evaluative pressure. What part specifically gives you pause? Or simply, why do you ask? The result is immediate. The dynamic is reversed. Finally, observe the response without interrupting and reply only to what's specific, keeping the rest of your knowledge protected. The difference is fundamental. Most people speak from a need for approval. You speak from the position of someone who evaluates if it's worth sharing more. It's not arrogance, it's proper valuation. He who speaks first loses. He who listens strategically commands a price. Imagine you're in a meeting presenting your service proposal. A modern boardroom, 4 decision makers in front of you. You finish your concise presentation and one of them says, "Your proposal seems interesting, but honestly, that price is well above what we handle with other similar providers." Most immediately go into defensive explanatory mode. They detail their experience, justify every cent of the budget, offer unrequested discounts, reveal their cost structure. The more they explain, the more they position themselves as desperate sellers. The room feels it. The negotiation is lost before it even begins. You, however, allow that comment to hang in the air for 3 full seconds. You maintain a slight smile and direct eye contact. Then, with a paused voice and a slightly lower tone than before, you ask, "I understand. Could you share with me what specific value elements you're comparing with those other proposals?" Now they are explaining, justifying their objection. The dynamic has reversed. You didn't defend your price. You elevated the evaluation criteria. After listening carefully, you respond only to the specific points mentioned, not to all the ones you could justify. You finish with, "I perfectly understand if this isn't what you're currently looking for. Our results work specifically for those who value main benefit." You didn't lower the price. You didn't over-explain. And paradoxically, you just increased your perceived value. Because when it comes to pricing, he who justifies discounts. He who questions sets the price. Now let's take this same principle to the realm of professional relationships. Imagine you're at a networking event and someone asks you directly, "And how exactly did you achieve those results for that client?" I'm doing something similar. The average professional feels a mix of pride and an opportunity to impress. They explain their methodology in detail, reveal their specific tools, even share their initial mistakes and how they solved them. It seems generous, but in reality, they're devaluing years of experience and positioning themselves as a free resource. You, however, smile genuinely and reply, "We combine some proprietary methods with a customized approach for their industry. Are you facing any particular challenges in your current project?" You weren't impolite, but you also didn't turn your premium knowledge into free content. You redirected the conversation to understand the intent behind the question. Depending on the answer, you can evaluate whether it's an opportunity for collaboration, paid mentorship, or simply someone looking for free solutions. Thus, what could be value leaks turn into monetization opportunities, because he who shares everything in networking gives it away. He who shares strategically bills for it. In the digital environment, this principle is exponentially amplified. Observe how the average influencer in your industry constantly shares all their knowledge in endless posts, exhaustive videos, 20-page free guides. It generates engagement, followers, virtual applause, but rarely generates wealth proportionate to their contribution. The strategic creator, on the contrary, shares powerful insights, but never the complete system. They show impressive results, but keep the method as the part I share with my clients. They create content that generates questions, not that answers all of them. The result: fewer explanations, more conversions. For every comment asking for more information, they don't reply with a free treatise, but with a strategic invitation. This is something we explore in depth in my program, Consulting Service. It's not retaining value, it's channeling it appropriately. Because in the digital world, he who explains everything becomes a free library. He who explains strategically builds an empire. But pay attention. There are 3 critical mistakes when applying strategic silence that can completely sabotage its benefits. The first mistake is confusing strategic silence with hostility or arrogance. This happens when you withhold information but with defensive or superior energy. The result: instead of intrigue, you generate rejection. It looks like strategy, but it's really insecurity disguised. The correction is simple. Powerful silence is always accompanied by authentic warmth and genuine curiosity about the other person. Second mistake: applying silence indiscriminately. Many make this mistake because they misinterpret the principle as never share anything valuable. It leads to a perception of real emptiness, not retained value. To avoid this, periodically give samples of brilliance, small doses of real value that validate your knowledge while reserving the complete system. Third mistake, the most subtle and dangerous: not actually having something valuable to hide. This is treacherous because strategic silence amplifies what truly exists. If you perceive that your reluctance generates disinterest instead of intrigue, it's time to invest in developing truly valuable methodologies and knowledge. These techniques work perfectly in daily practice. But there's a deeper level that transforms strategic silence from a simple tactic into a true wealth-generating identity. Here's the counterintuitive insight that most people will never understand. Value doesn't reside in the information itself, but in the contextual interpretation of that information. We've all been programmed to believe that knowledge is power, and that sharing it generously positions us favorably. The digital culture of sharing is caring, and transparency as a supreme virtue reinforce this idea. Our entire society operates under the paradigm that more shared information equals more perceived value. But when you carefully observe how the modern attention economy actually works, you notice a fascinating paradox. We are saturated with information but starved for meaning. There's a direct contradiction between information abundance and a scarcity of valuable interpretation. And this is where most people stop in their analysis. The profound truth is exactly the inverse. In a world of information overexposure, value has shifted entirely from the possession of information to its strategic curation. It's not how much you know or say, but when, how, and to whom you say it. Strategic silence isn't an absence of communication. It's the most powerful form of communication in an economy of informational excess. This changes everything because it completely redefines your positioning in any exchange. You're not a desperate provider of data and solutions, but a selective curator of valuable interpretations. When you internalize this, you can no longer view any professional interaction from the same perspective. Eduardo's story perfectly illustrates this principle. He developed a real estate investment system that generated consistent annual returns of 22% when the market averaged 8%. In his early days, eager to establish himself, he extensively shared his methodology in free seminars, podcasts, and detailed publications. He generated admiration, followers, but modest income from clients who wanted his personalized implementation. Everything changed when a mentor made a simple observation to him. "You're selling treasure maps for the price of a coffee." Eduardo completely restructured his communication. He started talking about results, not methods. He showed success stories without revealing the complete system. He created different levels of access to his knowledge, from basic to advanced. In less than a year, his same methodology, without substantial changes, multiplied its market valuation sevenfold. The same clients who previously wanted implementation for a few thousand now paid tens of thousands for his strategic advice. The pattern repeats universally. Observe the world's most highly sought-after consultancies. They share powerful insights in Harvard Business Review, but never the complete methodology. Look at the most valuable startups. They publish impressive results, never the exact algorithm. Even in medicine, the most expensive treatments aren't necessarily the most complex, but the least accessible. Think about that time you shared less than usual in a presentation, perhaps because you didn't have time to prepare everything, and paradoxically, you generated more interest. Do you remember that feeling? The different energy in the room? Why did it happen? Because you created space for them to project value where you usually fill everything with explanations. Mastery of wealth-generating silence doesn't come from talking less, but from positioning yourself differently. When you truly internalize this principle, you start evaluating every interaction based on its potential for valuation, not validation. You don't seek to impress with everything you know, but to intrigue with the precision of what you share. People perceive an unusual confidence in you, one that doesn't need constant validation. Situations that were once opportunities to prove what you know are now platforms to increase your market worth. And most transformatively, your internal relationship with your own knowledge fundamentally changes. You no longer feel that anxious urge to empty your mind to prove your worth. You recognize the power of strategic dosage, not as a manipulative tactic, but as responsible management of valuable resources. Because he who shares everything positions himself as a resource. He who shares strategically establishes himself as an asset. Now that you understand the fundamental principle, let's turn it into a practical system you can implement immediately. I'll give you 3 precise tools that separate those who apply strategic silence occasionally from those who turn it into a systematic wealth generator. The first tool is called expectation inversion. Essentially, it's the deliberate practice of delivering less content but greater value than your interlocutor initially expects. You use it specifically in presentations, written proposals, or when asked to share a little about your experience. Here's how it works in detail. Have the content you'd normally share, but double the depth of the few points you keep. Eliminate all process explanations and focus exclusively on principles and results. Finally, end with a question that redirects attention to their specific needs. For example, when asked to explain your methodology, instead of breaking down the 7 steps, reply, "We work with a proprietary system that focuses on 3 fundamental principles for your specific industry. Which of these challenges resonates most with your current situation?" The effect is that you appear more concise and focused than your competitors, and the conversation naturally moves toward an assessment of fit, not features. The second tool is the progressive exclusivity framework. It's a deliberate structure for sharing knowledge in layers of ascending value, never all at once. Applied correctly, it transforms every interaction into an opportunity to elevate your positioning. In practice, you mentally categorize your knowledge into 3 levels: public, privileged, and proprietary. Public content you share freely. These are valuable insights but never complete methodologies. Privileged knowledge is only revealed in contexts of equitable exchange, whether monetary or strategic. Proprietary knowledge is exclusively implemented in formalized business relationships. When someone asks for information, you consciously decide which level to share from. For example, if asked about your investment strategy, you could share a public principle. We focus on properties with disproportionate appreciation potential due to 3 specific zoning factors. If the conversation progresses favorably, you could reveal a privileged insight about one of those factors. The complete system remains proprietary. The third tool is Socratic silence, based on the ancient philosophical technique of answering questions with strategic questions. This tool is especially powerful in negotiations and when people try to extract too much free information. In essence, it involves redirecting every attempt to extract value with a question that deepens the conversation but maintains your position of power. It's not evasion, but strategic redirection. You implement it especially when you feel that urge to over-explain to impress. For example, when asked, "How specifically did you achieve that impressive result?" you would reply, "That's an excellent point. What specific aspect of that result is most relevant to what you're currently looking for?" You didn't evade the question, But you also didn't dump your premium knowledge into a generic answer. You steered the conversation toward a potential monetization opportunity. Businesses aren't built with explanations, but with transformations. And he who explains everything rarely transforms anything. Now I'm going to give you a surgical plan for the next 7 days. It's not theory, it's an immediate implementation protocol. For the first 2 days, your sole focus is to implement Socratic silence. Don't try to apply the entire system, just this. Every time someone asks you to explain your methodology, your strategy, or how you do what you do, and I guarantee it will happen at least 3 times in these 2 days, you will reply with a clarifying question before giving any explanation. No matter the context, meetings, calls, messages, emails. What you'll notice, initial internal resistance on day 1, the urge to impress is powerful. By day 2, an unusual sense of control in your conversations. You'll feel uncomfortable initially because it might seem like you're not adding value, but after applying it a few times, you'll notice how conversations deepen instead of diluting. People will start to perceive a different seriousness in you. Pay special attention to how their body language changes when you implement this technique. For days 3 and 4, while maintaining the first tool, you add the progressive exclusivity framework. Now you're implementing 2 tools simultaneously. When you have to present, propose, or explain something, you not only redirect with questions, but you consciously decide what level of information to share. The combination creates an immediate valorization effect of your knowledge. Here, the game visibly changes because you're setting clear boundaries around your intellectual property. You'll notice a shift in how you perceive yourself, greater clarity about the real value of what you know, and primarily a transformation in how others interact with you, with greater respect for your time and knowledge. If you feel some discomfort with existing clients, it's a sign that you're repositioning yourself correctly. Adjust the level of information shared based on the response you get. Days 5, 6, and 7 are for refining and integrating the third tool, expectation inversion. Now you operate with the complete system. Presentations, less content, greater depth, information requests, clarifying questions, value propositions, progressive levels of shared knowledge. Specifically, observe 3 patterns: how superficial conversations decrease, how monetization opportunities increase, and how your own anxiety to impress reduces. Adjust the intensity of strategic silence based on the responses you get. If someone shows frustration, it doesn't mean the technique isn't working, but rather that you've effectively filtered out someone looking for free value. At this point, you'll notice a tangible difference in the quality of your professional conversations. It's not imagination. It's the measurable result of repositioning the value of your knowledge. And this is just the beginning. But maximum attention now, because there are 3 errors that can destroy all the value you've started to build with strategic silence. Error number 1, implementing these techniques without absolute clarity about your value proposition. It looks like strategy, but in reality, it's confusion disguised as mystery. It occurs especially when you try to position generic services as exclusive. The indicator that you're falling into this is generating more confusion than intrigue. Immediate consequence: you lose credibility. Medium-term consequence: your positioning is completely diluted. The necessary correction is to precisely define what specific value you provide that justifies this strategic management of information. Second error: overcorrecting and becoming a total black box. Many make this mistake because they get enthusiastic about the power of strategic silence and take it to the extreme. It leads to distrust instead of valorization. To avoid this, consciously establish moments of transparency where you share real value, always keeping the complete methodology as your protected asset. Third error, the most dangerous: maintaining the same price while implementing strategic silence. This error is devastating because the ultimate goal of all this repositioning is the economic valorization of your knowledge. If you start behaving like a premium resource but continue charging like a commodity, you create destructive dissonance. If you notice you're sharing less but charging the same, it's a crucial time to review and raise your pricing structure in accordance with your new positioning. So let's recap, but not as a technical summary. I'm going to give you the 4 fundamental pillars that now define your new relationship with wealth creation through knowledge. First pillar: over-explaining is the most costly and normalized value leak in modern business. Systematically devaluing even the most brilliant ideas by turning them into accessible commodities. Second pillar: Strategic silence is not an absence of communication, but a deliberate management of access to your value, implemented through redirected questions, progressive levels of exclusivity, and less content with greater depth. Third pillar, real value in the knowledge economy doesn't reside in the information itself, but in contextual interpretation and transformative implementation, positioning you not as a provider but as a strategic asset. Fourth pillar, the systematic implementation of wealth-generating silence requires new deliberate behaviors in every interaction, conscious protection of proprietary methodologies, and proportional revaluation of your offering. These four pillars aren't abstract theory. They are the practical architecture of your new identity as a creator of premium value. Because in a world of constant noise, only strategic silence commands a price. Now comes your challenge, and it begins exactly in the next 24 hours. Not tomorrow, not next week, but in the very next full workday. During that period, a situation will inevitably occur where you'll be asked to explain your methodology, your strategy, or share your valuable knowledge for free. It could be in a meeting, an email, or even in a casual conversation with a potential client or partner. When it happens, and you'll know exactly when because you'll feel that familiar urge to impress with everything you know, I want you to apply the complete Socratic silence I showed you. Not a diluted or partial version, the exact implementation. You don't need to announce that you're trying a new technique. The beauty lies in its invisibility. Simply, when the request for valuable information comes, breathe consciously, maintain eye contact, or a deliberate pause if it's written, and redirect with a clarifying question about their specific situation. Observe the response carefully and how the conversation dynamic changes. Because when you implement this, three things will happen. You'll notice an immediate reorientation of the value flow in the conversation. You'll feel a new sense of control over your intellectual property, and you'll observe how your interlocutor perceives you with greater seriousness. This is your test moment, your opportunity to verify for yourself, not by me, not by others, but by your own direct experience, that this isn't mere theory, but the reality of how perceived value is created. And after implementing it, come back here and tell me specifically how the conversation dynamic changed. I want to know exactly what question you used and how your interlocutor's perception transformed. And now, the tribal password. Comment exactly this, word for word. Silence commands a price. Explanation devalues. This isn't just a comment. It's an identification of belonging. It's code among those who truly understand how value creation works in the digital age. It shows that you're not part of the majority who consume and forget, but rather one of the value strategists, those who understand that knowledge management is wealth management. This is our password, our mutual recognition protocol. I'll read each one personally and know exactly who grasped the essence and who simply skimmed over it. Comment right now. And since you've made it to the end of this content, there's something I deliberately haven't shared today. In the next video, I'll reveal the silent monetization system. It's about how to structure tiered offers based on the principle of strategic silence that connects directly with what we saw today, but from an angle that will completely transform your business model. It involves a counterintuitive method of proposal presentation, and it explains why the world's most highly sought-after experts never truly sell their services. But we'll delve into that in depth in the next content. Subscribe now and turn on notifications. The next video will be released in exactly 7 days. Remember the vault I mentioned at the beginning? Now you understand its true purpose. It's not simply about passive information protection. It's about the deliberate creation of strategic scarcity. You no longer need to validate yourself through endless explanations. You are the conscious guardian of a valuable asset. And when you strategically manage access to your knowledge, the world not only respects what you know more, it pays a premium to access it. True wealth has never been in what you say, but in what you strategically keep silent about. Now go, and silently command a price for what you used to give away by talking.